With current legislation dating back to the 1960s, it's not surprising that bodies like PACT and the Little Theatre Guild are welcoming a government review. But whilst current child licensing laws are still in place, what do we need to be aware of? We spoke with Margot Bland from Durham County Council and asked firstly, who's responsible for applying for the licence, the child's legal guardian or the producer?
It's the producer or the production company who applies for the licence. In the case of a local, like a youth theatre group or an amateur society, then it's generally a member of the committee who's designated to do that.
Within our group, I actually take the responsibility of arranging child's licensing. Any child actually joins the theatre group. We take several bits of information. We take their name, address, date of birth, daytime contact telephone number, evening contact number, any medical conditions that we need to be aware of, the school that they actually go to, and we put them into a database. So whenever we have a performance, we will choose the children who are actually in that performance, export them to an Excel spreadsheet, and that is what we actually send to the local authority. We need to let the local authority know when the performances are, which schools it's affected, and the timescales. It's very simple. It's one form that you need to fill in. Once you set up your spreadsheet, you just renew it every year and send it to the relevant local authority.
But is that the authority local to the child or the theatre group they attend? And when must the application be made?
The licensing authority is local to the child. It's where the child lives. It's in the legislation that licence application must be made 21 days before the first performance. That doesn't always happen. Quite often it's late. So local authorities will try to be flexible in that, but obviously we can't guarantee that we can produce a licence in less than that. There's no charge for the licence. The purpose of the legislation and the licensing system is to protect children. So obviously we don't want to put a charge on that.
I absolutely agree with the need to have a licence. We need to ensure that our young people are in a safe, secure environment where they can flourish.
And are there any circumstances when a licence is not required?
There is provision within the legislation for unlicensed performances, where licences aren't actually required. In certain circumstances, a licence will always be required, like if the child needs time off school or they're receiving payment for the performance or somebody else on their behalf is receiving payment. But a child can perform on up to 4 days in any 6-month period without actually needing a licence. Say you're a producer who wants to put on a performance just for maybe one night. Check back 6 months and see if they've taken part in anything else. And if they haven't, or if they've only performed in 1, 2 or 3 days, then you can go ahead without a licence for that. The local authority does still need to be informed. They need details of the children involved and what the performance is and where it is and what date and everything. There's also what we call an exemption issue to a body of persons, which can be done by the local authority. And this is aimed at local theatre groups, amateur societies, church groups, that kind of sort of group within the local area. And they have to show that they are responsible and that they have child protection procedures in place and that they're looking after the children involved. Again, they have to inform the local authority of the children who are involved as well.
So, is such a thing as a group licence available?
If licences are needed and we can't issue the body of persons exemption, then we can do what we call a composite licence, where if all the children are doing exactly the same, they're performing on the same days, doing the same kind of performance, we would only ask the producers to actually fill in part one of the licence, which is the part for the producer to fill in. We would, however, still need the part 2, which is what the parents fill in with details of the child and photographs and copy of birth certificate and everything.
What about working with children in general? If parents or volunteers are keen to help out with their local theatre group, what do they need to do to become a chaperone?
First of all, and utmost important, is you need a CRB check. To get a CRB check, you need 2 character references and you need to complete a state reference form. That will go off to your local authority, and that is the first part of your chaperone licence. The second part of it is the interaction with the children. You will have supervised access to the children to see how the interaction is there, the relationships, and how they coach and protect that child. If, as a group, we're satisfied with that, we will quite willingly take you on as one of our parental helpers or chaperones. We always have the documentation, and every chaperone is licensed with a CRB check, and they will carry that with them at all times during performances or child supervision.
All of us come every week so that we can get to know all of the children and get to know the parents, so that we can make sure that we know exactly who the children are with and who they go home with. I mean, some children come with grandparents, and we know who it is who's going to be bringing them and who's taking them home. And again, at the end of the evening, the children are collected from the stage door, the side door. They don't go out through the main auditorium. And we have, as well as the people you've seen here tonight, we also have a number of other CRB checked chaperones that work in the dressing room with the children, and they make sure as well that the children don't leave the theatre until the parents take them. Now, the parents are very good. We don't have a problem with children regularly being left beyond time, because the parents appreciate the group and they appreciate what the children get out of it.
We know the legislation is very old, but have there been any recent changes?
The last amendment to it was in about 2000, I think, the last official amendment. There are talks at the moment. The current government is interested in changing the legislation, revamping it, bringing it more up to date, after there were quite a few reality TV programmes on a year or two ago. And there was a lot of concern expressed about the safety of children, the emotional effect and mental effect that the programmes were having on them. And so a report was commissioned to actually look at bringing the legislation more up to date to cover things like that, and also to take out the old-fashioned parts of it. That's still ongoing at the moment. The report was published and it had certain recommendations, and the government, along with interested parties like a representative for the amateur sector and also broadcasters and producers, are involved in working parties to look at different aspects of the legislation.
So June and the team agree in general that licensing is worthwhile to safeguard our young performers, but would welcome a review of that legislation. We'll keep an eye on the situation and bring you any updates in a future programme.